No. Oh dear. Laura? Laura? The cup cracked when it hit the floor, so it's dripping at the bottom.
Hi everyone, and welcome to the Blue District School Board Special Education Advisory Committee meeting of June 16th. As you may be aware, if you attended the meeting in May, as of the May meeting, we were very disappointed as school representatives to discover that the live streaming, which has been so vital to parents and caregivers being able to attend the meetings virtually because it's obviously quite difficult to come to the board office at 7 p.m. on a Tuesday. But we live streaming that we had been very positive about had been ended by, I guess, by the provincial supervisor, Heather Watt, and we were very disappointed by that. We were also disappointed by the fact that the live stream, we weren't, as community representatives, advised that the live streaming had been ended, and we ended up finding out about 20 minutes into the meeting. So I'm putting that into record because we're very disappointed by the live streaming. We were very disappointed by the lack of notice about the live streaming ending. We were the last board that's under provincial supervision that was still live streaming to parents and caregivers in our school board. It's very disappointing to not have that entryway for the parents and caregivers of our kids in the PDSB. I have no idea what your concern is on behalf of the provincial government, but I think it is a very poor decision. And we continue to be opposed to the live streaming being eliminated. That said, we want to be productive in this last meeting of the school year because it should mean something that we have all gathered here month after month. So we will be going through, in the last meeting, after we discovered that the live streaming had been eliminated, we chose to not accept any of the staff reports as the minimal amount of protest that we were able to engage in. That's basically was what we were doing. However, because this is discussing changes and updates to the special education plan itself, what we will be doing is very much hoping that after the presentations that the staff will be open to amendments that are brought by community representatives. We will be happy to accept the reports and updates as long as they incorporate the amendments that are brought forth by community representatives. We want this to be productive. We don't want to just sit in the obstinate because we're upset about the live streaming. That was last month. So I would like to say that I just think that community transparency and access to parents and caregivers is so important. And this is a really hard location to get to. You're not central. And parent engagement and caregiver engagement is so important. Like the fact that people were logging in and watching these, we're not the most exciting people on the block. The people were actually watching these meetings to get information about their children with special needs and the policies and the discussions we were having were important to them. And to not have that as available to parents and caregivers in appeal is really disappointing. So now that I have clarified that, we will move on to the agenda. Oh, the other thing is that Heather Watt was kind enough to reach out to me and only me last Friday to ask me out for coffee. So I will be following up on that. I did respond and invite her to today's meeting, and she said that she was unavailable, but she would still like to have coffee. So I will be meeting with her to voice our displeasure with the supervision, with the lack of live streaming, and pretty much everything else that is going on right now with respect to these board supervisions. And we'll invite all the community representatives from SEAC, essentially use me because I'm a squeaky wheel. Now, I was a nice wheel before, but now I'm a very squeaky wheel. So I'm calling to order at 7:08, and hoping that my commentary is included in the minutes, or I should have called to order before. Just give me a break on that one, I hope. And the one member that is absent is Nicole Bucket with the Fragile X Research Foundation of Canada, and they're finding it hard to find another representative, as I understand it. Because again, it's really challenging to attend these meetings. I do also want to thank community representatives, of course, staff, but your money requires you to be here. And I am also welcoming all of our parent and caregiver and community reps who have attended tonight. I know it's very difficult to get to this location, and we appreciate your presence. And I do want to say that the people that are coming in person, I know it's tough, and we appreciate the people that are online. Thank you for coming. It's nice to have people here in person as well, because otherwise we feel kind of like we're up here all alone. So thank you for attending. So we called the meeting to order. We have noticed that taken the regrets from Nicole, and we're moving on to the acknowledgement of traditional territory.
The land upon which we work, live, and sustain ourselves is the ancestral and treaty rights of the Michizanvik and Anishinaabe, also known today as the Mississaugas of the Credit, the rightful caretakers and title holders of this land. We also recognize the rich free contact history and relationships which include the Anishinaabe and the Ongwe Ongwe.
Since European contact, this land continues to be home to Indigenous and non-Indigenous peoples. As responsible community members, we value the diversity, dignity, and worth of all peoples.
Colonialism displaced and dispossessed Indigenous peoples of their ancestral land.
And continues to deny their basic human rights, dignities, and freedoms.
We are committed to learning true history to reconcile, make reparations, and fulfill our treaty obligations to original peoples and our collective responsibilities to the land, water, animals, and each other for future generations.
So thank you for that. We're moving on to the approval of agenda. May I have a motion that the Special Education Advisory Committee approves the agenda as presented? We've got our stalwart too. So if are there any, is there any discussion or additions? We did ensure that we reviewed the agenda before it went out. Seeing none, all in favor of accepting the agenda as presented? And that is moved. And so any number four declarations of conflicts of interest, does anybody have conflicts of interest or declaration? And we're also checking back to our folks that are online. Seeing none, we're moving on to the approval of the minutes of the lively May 2026 meeting. So may I have a motion that the Special Education Advisory Committee approves the minutes of the May 19th, 2026 meeting? Because we're going to be second and discuss. So a mover and a seconder. Jen will second it, you got questions, how about that? All right, I like to start just, I'm just gonna start pointing people out, it's just gonna be mayhem today. We are gonna have a discussion of the minutes, and my understanding is that you have Thank you. So I went through the minutes, because we know the live stream, which is nice to go back to. We did include some turnarounds, and there's some that did have to get recording. So I'm back through, and there's a lot, that I'd like to include in this. So just read through that. So on item 8, the budget report, I'd like included, members expressed frustration at what second year of the budget discussions again are important. The fact that we did decline enrollment, smaller budgets for most are aware of. There's no discussion on what the plans are to address that. They felt it was difficult for the committee to revise the budget with information. They then indicated that at a very minimum, the following needs must be met: appropriate classroom settings for all students, training student needs for appropriate technology and equipment, appropriate training for all teachers with respect to special education. Members also questioned how the big ideas presented by the superintendent in the superintendent's report are going to be funded. They expressed that students with special education needs are not getting what they need in the classroom, so we're concerned with how the staff can best protect them. Should I just go through everything in the meeting? Yeah. Sure. Section 9, the accessibility report. Like I added the discussions that took place about how are schools being retrofitted for blind low vision students. Are we being proactive or reactive? Superintendent stated that the special education team are involved in the new build retrofit committee, and that blind low vision interns are very good advocates with respect to new builds and retrofits. A member asked if the board can share a video of the new schools with retrofits with respect to accessibility. Superintendent Kate should come back with this info. A member asked about how the board is measuring the effectiveness of training with respect to inclusion and anti-ableism. Superintendent responded that the new program of accessibility ambassadors is going to be used to understand what's going on in student life. And then we were to be sent the writing team's work on the ambassador program. After the meeting, I did notice today that did get sent today, although it did not include anything to do with anti-ableism or inclusion. So I'm still looking for that. A member asked about the number of staff with disabilities. It was told that a county survey had just been completed. Staff were able to self-identify as well as surveys were completed in April. So there should be data on the numbers and the feelings around inclusion and job satisfaction. A member asked if an A-rated school includes a truly accessible elevator. A student can access the elevator on their own. This info would be brought back at a future meeting. Another question was, are facility accessibility items included in the SEAC budget? And the answer is no, they are in the facility budget. Section 10, special education staffing. Member asked whether there were any staff that are paid by the special education budget that were not on the special education staffing list, or were in all positions that are paid by the special education budget will be brought back to the committee. The member identified that there's a discrepancy between last year's report and this year's numbers with respect to attendance. Discussion regarding exactly which positions were being reduced and by how many. Staff agreed to bring back a report that breaks down each of the categories with the indication of last year's and this year's numbers. The member indicated that based on last year's number compared with this report, that there are 187 positions removed, not including any changes to EA. Staff indicated that they thought it was left, that they would bring back the actual number. So those are the changes I could see needed to be. Thank you, Jen. Are there any other amendments or any feedback on the minutes? Other than that, from our community representative? Seeing none. Oh, sorry, yes. Through the chair, just a motion to amend as read out by member May. Word seconded for that. Okay, so we would be, as we've been, as it's been suggested, that we would be doing an amendments motion to accept the changes that Jen brought to the minutes. And the waiver and seconder. And if there's any discussion, I think thank you for being so thorough about that. The minutes become more and more important as we don't have other resources for parents and caregivers, and even for those of us who are at the meetings and can't recall anything. It's really important to have that detail. So all in favor of accepting the amended minutes? And folks, when we see you on online, make sure that everybody's there. Typically, oh, there we go. We've got it. I'm sorry. So all in favor, and that is passed. Thank you very much, Jen. That was very close. Oh, do you want to discuss the minutes? Yes.
Well, I just,
Sure, go ahead.
given that everything has changed, I would like to consider and have this conversation about, how we handle minutes going forward, and whether there's opportunity that, SEAC could get a draft copy sooner, such that they can make sure that everything's included as opposed to a month later, when we've all kind of lost track of what happened in that meeting. So that's just up for discussion. I can put a motion forward, or I don't know if we want to discuss that or no. That's even possible.
Through the chair, I think we can do that for planning, for motion, to come back with that.
So we need a motion to receive the minutes earlier prior to the meeting. Oh, Jen's got something to say. You weren't so prepared.
Whereas live stream is ended, whereas many reports are oral and did not, inaudible info can be found in the minutes, whereas changes to services have been repeatedly relayed during all reports. You remove that, all reports, I agree.
Just a moment. we're
Moment.
pausing.
Back up.
Yeah.
So, apologies, just a motion that a draft of SEAC meeting minutes must be provided to the SEAC committee within 5 business days after the meeting.
Is that reasonable? It's not. What is possible?
Let's say a week of business days, so.
Seven
Seven,
Seven
days.
Are you okay with that?
Business days.
Business days. Okay, so 7 business days, so we leave it, so, we need to move her to secondary for that. Okay, there, all right. So do you want to, is there any discussion on this? I think that that's reasonable since the minutes have become very, very important. In terms of being able to communicate with, parents, caregivers, and others in PTSD. So if there are no questions or feedback, then, the approval of that motion, all in favor? And I would assume the folks, online are approving that as well, so that is carried. Thank you very much, Jen. Is there anything else around the minutes that, we have to discuss? It looks like that we don't have any delegations this month, so we would be moving on to reports from officials and staff, and the first is, our superintendent's skip on the board.
Thank you, and through you, Chair. Good evening and welcome to everybody. As we gather for our final SEAC meeting of the 2025-2026 school year, I'd like to begin by acknowledging and thanking each of you for your continued commitment. Your willingness, as our chair said, to give your time, to share your expertise, and advocate on behalf of students is both meaningful and impactful. The work of SEAC is critical in shaping the development and delivery of special education programs and services, and your voices really do matter. I would like to also extend my sincere appreciation to our special education team, many of whom are here with us both online and in person, and all of those that work directly in schools with students. Your ongoing dedication, professionalism, and relentless efforts to support our most vulnerable learners do not go unnoticed. Every day you contribute to removing barriers and creating conditions for students to thrive, and we are deeply grateful for your work. This evening is also a really special one, as it marks the final SEAC meeting for Dr. Erla Jacket prior to her retirement. Erla has been both the intellectual anchor and the compassionate force behind so much of the work of this department. Over the course of her career as an EA teacher, vice principal, and in her central leadership role, she has consistently championed equity and inclusion for all students with disabilities. I will confidently say that she's done so with remarkable strength, both in conviction and in voice. Anyone who knows Erla knows that she is not quiet in sharing her advocacy for students and families. She doesn't just raise a point, she does really raise the standard. Her contributions have shaped not only the work we do today, but the structure, systems, and approaches that will continue to guide us for years to come. Her legacy is one of purpose, impact, and unwavering commitment to students. On behalf of all of us, Erla, we want to to reflect on the past year, we also want to think ahead. The strength of SEAC lies in its ability to bring forward the voices of community, families, and ultimately students. As we begin planning for the 2026-2027 school year, we want to ensure that those voices continue to shape our work in meaningful ways. To that end, I would invite all of the SEAC members to share with the chair and vice chair any topics, priorities, areas of focus you'd like to see in next year's meetings. As we come together over the summer to plan, our goal is to ensure that the work ahead reflects and honors the perspectives around the table. Turning to tonight's agendas, Coordinating Principal Jeff Bertrand, our Social Sergeant, will be sharing with you the amendment to the Special Education Plan. As outlined in previous meetings, all significant changes have been brought forward to SEAC throughout the year for discussion and feedback. This evening's presentation will provide a summary of those discussions, along with additional updates that are more minor in nature, primarily related to language, clarification, and operational language. Finally, I want to close with a video featuring a PDSB student. This is why we are all here. Mansi Patel, who was part of the recent TEDx PDSB student talks. She's a driven grade 12 student, was student council president. Mansi is known for turning ideas into action. Living with cerebral palsy has never defined her limits. It's only sharpened her perspective as she champions inclusion and calls out ableism as something she's determined to dismantle. In her talk we're about to see, My Limits, My Rules, Redefining What I Can and Cannot Do, Mansi confronts the stereotypes often placed on individuals with disabilities, reclaiming the narrative and redefining what limitation truly means. Recently accepted in the 2026 Harvard Pre-College and Launch X summer programs, she's now preparing for a future in business where she plans to combine her passion for advocacy with strategic management. With more than 300 volunteer hours, her ambition is to build ventures, shift mindsets, and ensure that leadership comes from a place of authenticity that honors every voice. And Mansi is just one example of the many, many students that we support who are doing amazing things. You can play.
If your life was a book, who would write it? You're probably gonna say, myself. But take a second and really think. Right now, are you actually the one writing your story? Or are you letting someone else around you hold the pen? For a long time, I wasn't the author of my own life. Others were writing my chapters before I even had a chance to speak. For example, you know that moment in school when the teacher says, okay everyone, get into groups? For most, it's a mad dash to find friends. But for me, it was a reminder that I was different. I sit there and it's like I've become invisible. No one asks me to join. I'm the one the teacher has to assign to a group at the end. And once I'm in the group, it's worse. The whispers, the side eye, the way my group mates talk around me, not to me. I sit in class at my table, and the seats next to me are always empty. Like disability is somehow contagious. When school is meant to be where you belong, instances like these make me feel like an outsider within my own community. Then there's the rest of the world. My immediate family is the best. They're my strength and support. But I have what feels like 100 uncles and aunties that have no filter. I've had relatives come up to me, look me straight in the face, and say, I feel so bad for you. You're so smart. If only you could walk. I'll put on a beautiful dress for a wedding, feel like $1 million, and someone will come up to me, sigh deeply, and comment, you look so pretty. If only you could stand up, that dress would look so much better. They might even shed a tear or two. Or I'll talk about my dreams, and I'll hear, you can't do that. Only people who walk can do that.
Clearly, when the TS4 Taj Hybrid can go up to 775 kilometers without stop for gas.
Welcome to the future of fuel efficiency in the new Kia Sportage. Kia, movement that inspires. Power companies hate when you do this, but there's nothing they can do about it. There's a new portable cooling system that can drop the temperature in a room by up to 30 degrees in just 90 seconds. And the crazy part, it runs on barely any power.
To them, my life is a series of if onlys. If only she could walk, she'd be successful. If only she were normal, she'd have a future. They see my disability as a tragedy to be mourned rather than a life to be lived equally in worth to everyone else. When I was born, my C1C2 in my spine got injured. That's how I ended up with cerebral palsy. As a toddler, I couldn't sit or even hold my head up. The doctors predicted, as I grow older, I might recover a little bit. Through years of physio and occupational therapy, I fought for every inch of that improvement. I went from not being able to lift just a finger to sitting, then crawling, and now, at 17, I can stand and walk with support. But still, in the eyes of society, I had to be fully not disabled to be normal. And for a long time, I believed them. I felt so let down. I was defeated, trying so hard to fix myself, to appease society, and just blend in. But then, this reflection, something that had been consuming my everyday thoughts, made me realize that I am perfect exactly the way I am. God gave me this life for a reason, and for the best of it. And I knew if I didn't speak up, people would keep writing my story for me, and I didn't like the version they were writing. My wheelchair might be the first thing you see, but my mind, my drive, and my voice are what defines who I actually am. People think they're all the way up here, and I'm down here. They think being my friends or interacting with me will make them go from here to here. I'm pretty sure they'd want to be friends with the girl who just got accepted into the Harvard summer program at Longex. They definitely want to be friends with the student council president, the executive of Brampton's largest student-led business organization, and the girl who places first, second, top 20 in national and provincial competitions. I don't say this to brag. Okay, maybe a little. But because those accomplishments happened despite my disability, this proves that I'm so much more than how society tries to perceive me. But I'm not here to just tell my story. I'm here to show that society needs to change. We ask marginalized people to change, but we rarely ask society to stop creating those rules in the first place. Society thinks inclusion is meeting people's needs or acknowledging them. Do we have a ramp? Yes. Do we have an automatic door? Yes. Great. We're inclusive. But true inclusion is about changing mindsets. It's about realizing you shouldn't make assumptions about someone who's different from you. This isn't just for a disabled person. Whether it's your race, gender, background, or how you look, we all have moments where society tries to put us in a group, telling us who we are based on a label. But let me tell you, that label is just a perspective. We need to shift that perspective, and it starts through us. Navigating a world not designed for me didn't break me. It forced me to find a voice when the world tried to mute me. I realized there are too many people who accept and stay under the low bar society sets. So I thought to myself, what can I do? I started an initiative to help uplift youth with disabilities and empower them to use their voice as a force for change. So far, I've mentored over 100 kids and will continue to. But I want to ask, what can you do? Because your unique life experience is your platform. The exact pressure of being overlooked is the pressure that turns coal into diamonds. If we all come together and simply start by standing up for ourselves, we can shift the way the world thinks. We can peel those labels off one by one. If you're sitting in the audience today and you feel like an outsider, I want you to hear this. I've spent 17 years looking at the world from a seated perspective, and I can clearly say that the only real limits are the ones we allow others to place on us. We don't need to shift the world overnight. We just need to start now. And yes, your life is a book. So take the pen back if you haven't. Embrace your real self and make sure that from this moment on, you're the only one writing your story exactly the way you want it to be. So say this with me, loud and proud. My limits, my rules. Thank you.
Thank you, and I think students like Nancy remind us why it's so important that we're all here. I love rooting what we do in student voice and her experiences. They ground our work in what matters most, our shared belief that we must continuously remove barriers and make thoughtful improvements so that every student has equitable access, meaningful experiences, and successful outcomes. In all that we do, students are the most important. That is where our focus must remain. Thank you, I appreciate each of you, thank you. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. So we need to have a motion to accept that the Special Education Advisory Committee receives the superintendent's report. We'll hear it seconder. Any discussion or questions? I know it's looking at you, I know I shouldn't do that.
Jan? I just want to say thanks to her for what you've done over the years, and congratulations. I'm just curious, Olivia, where is she doing this mentorship? Is that through PSP or through somewhere else? Through you, sure, that was something I'm gonna have to find out. I know she is mentoring other students within the board, but I think she has an organization she's created inside. But I can find out more details and with her permission and consent, share that out. Because I think it would be powerful to share with your organizations. Because I think she speaks to a level of student advocacy and efficacy that we really believe. So I can certainly happy to share that, if with her permission, of course.
Have you had a chance to sit down with her and see how she feels about her experience in PSP?
So not her in particular, but we have approached her about the ambassador program. So I think that she is one of the students that we're reaching out to with the ambassador program. So through Chair, I'll just ask Director Shirley.
Through Chair, I would like to say that this TEDx event was organized by certain staff here, and it took a lot of effort. So we have 250 students interested in being a TEDx talk. And after review and screening, all were good, 12 were selected, and Nancy was one of them. So I have had the opportunity to see her and meet with her mother at practice sessions and as well as at the final talk, which was just a month or so ago. And of course she's had challenges, but she has overcome them as we heard her because she wanted to define her own rules. And even that day when you're seeing her, she wasn't feeling well. And yeah, she said, no, I will do my talk. And she had her mother's support. And I mean, I really salute her for her resilience and courage and wanting to spread her message. The other thing is, our kids, they want to do so much, but they always need support. So this talk is the result of mentors, staff mentors who guided her and took finesse the talk so that it looks like such a professional heartfelt message to the system. So definitely she has experienced her challenges, but has also spread the message how to overcome them.
more questions? Does anybody else have any questions or feedback for the superintendent's report, either online or here? If not, we will, just want to make sure I don't rush on the training. Well, thank you. So then all in favor of accepting, the superintendent's report as presented? I would say that we are accepting that and move on. So the next is 7.2, the special education plan amendment 2026. I do want to point out for folks that are here in the who are viewing, there are full agendas at the back that are printed out, as well as the updated agenda, so that the updated agenda has a few new bits to it, and there you can follow along for the special education plan amendment and other things in the package there. Just before we move on, so I'll go to the special education plan amendments 2026. Thank you, and through you, Chair, I would like to ask coordinator principals Ursula to start and this is our report.
We're going to, Jeff and I are going to go over some of the highlights of this plan. And just to let you know that all of this is anchored and aligned with our multi-year strategic plan. All right, so the board, the highlights are the report outlines changes made to the published special education plan. And for the purpose of a presentation, we have organized things into multiple categories. There will be program updates, updates to learning hubs, projected staffing, professional learning, and others categories.
Thank you, and through you, Chair. In the actual report, you'll notice that we've summarized changes by standard. I think if they appear in more than one standard, we would indicate both standards that they appear in. However, as Ursula said, for the slide deck, we decided to group things more thematically rather than going through it standard by standard. So I'm going to take a minute or two to talk about some of the changes to programs that are in the amendment. So one of the bigger changes is that we now have program descriptions for all placement in Standard 9, which is special education placements. Last year, with the change to learning hubs, those program descriptions appeared in Standard 2, which is the board's general model of special education, in a chart with links that people could click on. But because Standard 9 is actually special education placements, we decided to put them there as well so that everything is in one place for families when they are looking for information about placements. The communication program description has been updated to reflect daily programming and the importance of program fidelity. So we've strengthened the language there to ensure that families and as well schools understand that maintaining that program fidelity is key to students making the gains that we would expect them to make. So we have classified that one really as a clarification more than an update or change. The communication program cluster admission criteria was updated to increase access. So we have broadened the criteria a little bit, not too much, in a hopes to increase access so that more students are able to access our communication clusters. We left it as a small change so that the groupings within the program would still remain cohesive enough that progress could be made in the program for all students. The elementary communication cluster class continues in its current format, and the secondary regional communication program phase out continues. Those are just program updates and clarifications. For secondary, Learning Support Level 1 and Learning Support Level 2 placements, we updated the pathway options to include the Certificate of Accomplishment because that is a potential pathway that was not listed on the program description previously, so that's a clarification. As well, we've included the number of students in each demonstration school. That is an annual update that's required as part of the amendment. And then Education and Community Partnership Programs, or ECPP, and Care and Treatment of Education Programs, CTEP. The ministry this year has separated those two different programs from what used to all be grouped under ECPP. So we've updated the amendment to reflect that language and change from the ministry. And so we just wanted to clarify that that is one of the changes we have made.
Great. I'm going to cover some of the changes to our learning hubs. So as we had spoken about in December, I believe in SEAC, we mentioned that our Learning Hub 6 Medical Complex class has been updated to Learning Hub Medical Complex. And that was because there was a class size maximum adjustment to 8 where appropriate. And then the pathways option was also updated to include the certificate of accomplishment, which was missing. The next change into our learning hubs was the Learning Hub 6T, or our transitions program. We just wanted to clarify that because that was included. That was only available in our vocational level 1 schools, and that includes Glen Forest, Judith Nyman, Turner Fenton, and West Credit. And our Learning Hub 8 has been phased out. Students were able to complete the program this year and transition out to secondary schools. As we all know, our Learning Hub 10-hour resource program delivery model has been adjusted for next year to reflect students being timetabled into two inclusion classes and 2 special education classes during the day. We also wanted to highlight that as part of that, the Peel Virtual Secondary School Learning Hub 10R has changed to a Learning Hub 10, which has a similar program delivery as part of the
As well as part of the amendment, special education staff allocations for OCTs and for educational assistants were provided in the May SEAC meeting. And we wanted to highlight 2 things that we have added into the standard around professional learning because they were significant opportunities for staff this year. So one is OLINK, oral language in kindergarten, as well as everyday speech. I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about OLINK since it's the next report on the agenda, and I will let Anna and Julia speak to that one. The other one was the partnership and professional learning with Dr. Shanif Esmail around healthy relationships and social boundaries, as well as the pilot of putting those resources and materials into schools. There were multiple opportunities for staff, for administrators, for parents to attend sessions with Dr. Esmail as well.
And we're going to cover a few sort of other amendments that didn't necessarily fall into the other categories. The first one was a ministry request, and that was for the inclusion of majority and minority reports from the SEAC committee. And we had to include that there were no majority or minority reports during this school year. The next sort of amendment update is the new resource, the draft Parents Guide. That is in course, and that is also a response to the audit, and we are hoping to get this out as part of the amendment. Our third other update is reformatting of Standard 14, and that references some of updating the ineligible equipment expenses and additional costs for blind, deaf, or deaf-blind students. Parent notification and equipment portability sections, those have also been updated. And our annual SEAC membership list has also been updated to include the interim membership and to reflect supervision of the PBSB. And finally, there is a new resource guide to this special education for families and caregivers, and that is something that is posted on our board's external public-facing list. And for next steps, as always, our amendments will be published to the Ministry of Education by July 31st, and then uploaded to our Peel website by September 1st.
thank you very much. The first thing you need to do is have a motion to approve the special education plan and then 2026 presentation as presented. If we could have a seconder. Jen and thank you. And discussion, questions, feedback. I love it. So Dorothy, would you like to go first?
I was actually trying to second.
Oh, we can do that too. Thank you, Dorothy. Do you have any questions or feedback, or do you just want a second?
Just wanted to second.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, any other feedback, questions?
So I'll start with the good. Thank you for actually identifying where the changes are as opposed to sending us the entire document. That's very much appreciated. Although it would be good to have that document as an appendix in the future, so we'd actually see the changes, because I can't picture some of these changes, so in the future we'd actually look at the document itself. I'd like to start with, I went through this just today and tried to look back and find all of these things we've been told. The majority of them are in the oral report and not very well documented in our minutes. We talked about it earlier. I don't feel that any of, very few of these were actually consultations. They were more sharing information with us, including tonight, including reports and documents that we're not going to see before they're sent to the ministry. Two of them here tonight. The resource for special education families. Did we see that? Yes. When did we see that?
Through you, Chair, I can't recall, but we brought it and sent it out as a resource for feedback. Might have to look back.
Yeah, hopefully.
Through you, Chair, it was shared in June of 2025, the initial draft.
Oh, it was really, that was 2025, sorry. I said it was today. It was 2025. Okay, and then the other document was the, draft for parents' guide to identification placements and review PRC.
Through you, Chair, no, not yet. We had hoped to have it ready for today to get feedback ahead of, but unfortunately we were unable to. So it's pending, so it may or may not go with the amendment. It just depends if we can get it done and vetted and approved before we have to send it in July.
Through you, Chair, if I can add to that, I have read it and took into consideration the feedback from the audit about sort of the language that we're using, and it was too long. So I did send it back to the team who wrote it based on that feedback that we received through the audit around making it more accessible to families, but we could certainly bring it back here. That's why we labeled it a draft.
Yeah, so I guess the majority of these were for information, not consultation, and a lot of them were in oral reports. It feels like things are being sandwiched in places, things are being put out, especially changes to programs in oral reports. It would be really helpful if people knew ahead of time that they're meeting with these things are going to be happening. The changes are going to be made, they need to be documented better for the public as well. Because honestly, many of these were footnotes in the report, not actual. We're making changes to programs for the students, and they're in your report, so they look more substantial, so where we are, I had to go back and dig through and actually find them in the minutes of the next meeting. It needs to be identified. We're making program changes, it needs to be clear. Okay. So that brings me to the motion I tried to read earlier. Which I will, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead, Sarah.
Hi, sorry if I missed this, but in regards to the special education staff allocations, I was wondering if you can please expand on this and the difference between last year.
Who would like to say that?
So through you, we do understand the request that SEAC's made around the additional staffing chart. We did consult, and that the information was already brought forward in May, and the chart that we share is in alignment with ministry expectations for reporting. So we did share the new staffing numbers from this year, and the staffing numbers from last year are presented as well. And in last year's special education plan, so they are available.
Sarah, did that answer your question?
Okay, thank you.
Jen?
So again, you're making volunteers who come here dig for information. It feels like you're trying to hide information, to be perfectly fair. It is simple enough. You have the data on the spreadsheet, you put last year's, you put this year's. It's not, I went through, found it, mashed them all up, sent it to our team so that we would have it. We should not have to do that. Your volunteers are here to help. You don't want our help, it appears, because you're not giving us the tools to allow us to advise.
I would like to suggest that if we, if the SEAC members make a request, we don't need to be redirected to, oh, you can go back to such and such and so and so. If we ask for a comparison of numbers, that should be reasonably fulfilled. Would that be a problem? Yeah.
May I suggest if the committee is seeking further information and data or an alternate format than what was provided, that we formalize it through motion?
Would that mean it would actually happen? That would be.
It's not a trick question. Each motion would be evaluated.
Right. Well, see, because that's it, and are we saying that the motions are being evaluated by Ms. Watt? Is that the?
Yes, so any motion to direct staff would be forwarded to the board for approval.
Right, but that is that when we're saying forwarded, just to be clear, just so because I think it's really important. So forwarded to the board is forwarded to Heather Watt, the program supervisor. Correct. Yeah, because I don't know about anybody else, but I don't consider it very important. I would say just to be clear about that as well.
Yes, so she's taking on the role of the board in place of trustees.
Right. Yeah, we don't recognize that in our current situation. So what I have a question. Are you finished, or did you have a motion? The one thing. Sorry, we're just kind of ponging along here. I have a question about the ministry request for an inclusion of majority and minority reports from the SEAC committee. Can we have a little bit more information on that?
Sure, through you, Chair. When we submitted the plan and amendment last year, we did not include a statement or description of the number of majority and minority reports from SEAC, and that is a requirement of the standards. So our ministry contact reached out earlier in the spring and asked us to update that. The purpose of that is to show how many majority and minority reports SEAC members have presented to the board over the course of the year. So we haven't had any in the last couple of years. So we've updated the amendment just with a statement that says there are no majority or minority reports to share.
Okay, so this was standard operating procedure and they're just following up, is that right?
Yes, so we missed that or didn't include it because we didn't have any reports, and they've asked us, even if we don't have any, to now include a statement indicating such.
Okay, thank you. Other questions or feedback? I had another one that's just crazy enough, which is really quite unfortunate, but not surprising. So Jen would like to put forward the motion as suggested, so why don't you go ahead with that?
I start with, I'm just making this up on the fly, so bear with me. Whereas staff are unable to provide the data that's been requested in previous meetings, where it is not clear to members what reductions have taken place in staffing in the special education department, whereas staff cannot indicate how many staffing members have positions have been removed. So it moved that report be provided with the special education plan.
seconder for that motion. Jen's moved it, so then we just.
Can we read it aloud, make sure we got it? You haven't got it, okay. I'm thinking it up on the fly.
Yeah, have you guys done it?
Apparently I can't just ask for you.
No.
Sorry.
I do not take notes last week. Okay.
Okay. Whereas staff are unable to provide data as requested, where it is not clear to members what reductions have taken place in the special education department. Whereas staff cannot, sorry, I'm going to.
Yeah, maybe the first place to go. Let's use some technology.
Whereas staff are unable to provide data as requested, whereas it is not clear to members what reductions have taken place in the staffing reductions have taken place in the special education department, whereas staff cannot indicate how many positions have been removed from the special education department. Be it moved that staff provides a report in the special education plan going forward that includes previous year's staffing and current year staffing numbers.
Seconder for that? Sorry, seconder for that? Any questions or discussion? All in favor of the motion? That is approved, as presented. So, are we also, geez, now I'm losing track. Are we also approving the overall presentation? Does that encompass that?
That's still on the floor, that one.
Oh, yeah, that's what I thought. Yeah. So, are there, is there any further discussion on the overall? She's just up and ready to go.
Okay, another motion, maybe. Come on. Just don't sit here.
Go, Jared. Thank you very much. Like, we do always appreciate how that Jen spends an inordinate amount of volunteer time going through every last single part of the agenda and minutes, and we appreciate it.
Whereas live stream is ended, whereas many reports are oral and not all information is found in the minutes. Whereas changes to services have been repeatedly done in oral reports. Be it moved that all reports in their entirety must be included in the agenda prior to the meeting or within 7 business days of the meeting being held. Did you get that?
Or no, she's getting. Seconder. Oops, sorry. Okay, we have seconder. Any discussion or questions on that motion? Seeing none, all in favor? That motion as well is adopted and passed by the committee. Thank you. So we still have on the floor the actual plan amendments. Does anybody have specific questions about the presentation method?
Just like it to be noted in the minutes that I don't feel that for myself that SEAC was consulted on the special education plan. We were informed.
I do agree. We've had this conversation at least for, I think, the last 3 years that we need to do better as a committee to engage community representatives who are donating their time as volunteers. We want to be able to reasonably be part of, like, truly consulted. And it is really challenging when it comes as presentations. It's also, it's a significant amount of information. We'll be discussing this in terms of planning the next school year of SEAC meetings, because we did do an agenda based on themes, but then it does end up becoming very presentation-like. And we need to look at better ways during the meetings, not after, because most people have difficulty doing follow-up, but during the meetings of making it a more consultative process. I agree with that as well. And I do want to emphasize numbers, please. When we're talking about budgets, we want to see dollars. When we're talking about staff, we want to see staff numbers, not just descriptions. I think that's very there any other comments or questions for the presenter? Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just gonna add if we could see like the change year over year in the budget and the numbers, just to your point earlier, without having the numbers and not being able to understand the entire story itself.
Agreed. Any other feedback or questions? Okay, if we have, it's a lot, this is the big one. Seeing none, we will move forward with approving the presentation and plan, changing the plan as presented, with the motions that have also been approved. Receiving, sorry, not approving, receiving. Oh. Which do you want to change the wording? Jill would like to stick with the seating. We note that, please. I agree with that. Because if we're receiving a presentation, it's different than approving the changes. Those are two different activities. So we're receiving the presentation as presented. All in favor? That motion is carried. And we are moving on now. Thanks, Jen. That's a lot of work. I really appreciate it. To the next, oh gosh, to the next presentation, which I believe is on the oral language in kindergarten, 2025-26 only.
Thank you, and through you, Chair, I'm very pleased to present the amazing work of our speech and language department, along with partners in curriculum around oral language in kindergarten that we did throughout the year. And on behalf of the board, I would like to ask Anna Seni and Julia Brain, who are speech and language co-managers, to present.
Good evening, everybody. I'm super excited to present this group. Very exciting. I'm sure a lot of you have heard of oral language in kindergarten. It's an initiative that we have as a speech and language department at the beginning of the year. This is the Scarborough Reading Room. Okay, I'm not sure if anybody here is familiar with it, but I'm going to be really brief on this slide. I don't want to get too technical, but we want our kids, regardless of ability, regardless of skill, educational skill, to be readers, to have access to literacy. The journey to skilled reading is the top portion you see, which is understanding oral language, and the bottom portion that says word reading skills. The board has done a great job at word reading skills, phonological awareness, decoding, sight recognition. As a speech and language pathology department, we targeted casting a very wide net, this top portion, understanding oral language. When I say a really wide net, we had a massive tier 1 initiative throughout the board at the beginning of the year. We have seen through this initiative an incredible shift in teachers' practice across the board, and we have that evidenced through some surveys that we want to share with you. I also want to mention that the Oral Language in Kindergarten initiative aligned with our multi-year strategic plan and also the STECET goals. So, in short, at the beginning of the year, between September 22nd and November 22nd, our speech and language department visited about 750 kindergarten classes. That's 3,000 visits in 2 months. And that's 20,000 kids positively impacted by this massive tier 1 capacity building initiative. So what was a positive impact? Well, Julia just handed out an executive summary that has some more surveys in it that you can peruse. There's a fulsome report in your agenda packages, but the two duty holders that we would like to focus on are principals and educators. So the question was, what was the positive impact of oral language in kindergarten on kindergarten teams and or its overall success? This rectangle around principals shows that 51% reported that it was an 8 on 10. That's a big positive trend. Some quotes from principals, which I think are important to read. Keep it going. It was an amazing practical modeled opportunity for educators to enrich their instructional practices with direct impact on students. Another one said, it was wonderful. It was a wonderful model to have the administrator aware of the initiative, but not quarterbacking its implementation. And just so that we're real about things, we included, a quote that indicates that not everything is sunshine and rainbows with massive initiatives like this. So the timing of the initiative watered down its effectiveness. Our newest learners had nowhere near settled into their routines of school. Now, the initiative itself was really positive, the content was positive, but Julia later is going to present on what we're doing to keep this going, speaking to this last point that the principal mentioned. Now, what about educators? So educators largely, 35% of them gave it a 10 on 10. So there's a big positive trend there as well. Some educator voices are, it was hands-on and valuable to have SLPs directly teach us strategies, model, and then provide feedback. Your expertise has given us new tools and renewed confidence. The binder, which is an oral language in kindergarten resource that our department created to disseminate during this initiative. The binder is such a beautiful resource, especially the book companion. It's so practical and helpful, designed beautifully with supportive visuals and organized nicely. The content and strategies were so relevant and doable for kindergarten. It was a good refresher. Having the initial information presented in a quieter environment beforehand would have supported my understanding. So again, just a realist moment there, and that's something we're taking into account moving forward. Some other interesting data that we collected, what has OLINK supported? OLINK, again, oral language in kindergarten. These responses are from educators. 84% of respondents said my interactions with student. That's fantastic. That's rooted in social communication. My instructional practices, and that's 83%. Students' oral language development, 84%. Keep in mind, oral language is one of the underpinnings of literacy. That's why that's important. As a result of the OLINK, 83% responded, I think about how to develop students' oral language skills during the school day. 69% say, I plan for explicit instruction to develop students' oral language. And 86% said, I noticed the different ways students communicate. Intonation, gestures, vocabulary, sentence structure. When we first presented on OLINK, we had an excellent question. Jennifer, I think it was from you. But how is this supporting students that use a variety of communication methods? Well, this was intentionally supporting communication for students with a variety of communication methods. Now, in a massive shift, most kindergarten educators are intentionally thinking about that. So I'll hand this over to Julia, who's going to talk about what our services look like during OLINK, because there were some questions there.
Okay, thank you, Bennett. So during OLINK, the SLP department did not halt all Tier 3 individual referrals. We did initiate 770 Tier 3 individual referrals with a focus, though, on the system's most urgent needs for communication. So a general definition here of what was an urgent need was a situation where the student had no previous speech and language support, and there were no recommendations in the OSR to work with. The student had no means to communicate, so there was no system in place to aid the student in communicating. Urgent referrals were continued to support augmentative and alternative communication device trials. Those proceeded. And we also continued to attend the SRM student review meetings. That's where we have discussions to basically get our Tier 3 referrals and learn how we can support schools. So we did continue to attend those meetings throughout OLINK. Now, to maintain and build upon what we've learned about supporting oral language and those links to literacy, we've designed a menu of options for this fall and moving forward. These options will be available to superintendents of schools, principals, and educators. They have different options to choose from, and all of these options are continuing to be Tier 1 options. They're not for an individual student, but they're really to continue to build capacity across the system. This is a very draft example. We have a writing team that's comprised of speech and language pathologists and educators, and they have started their work already. And this was a very stage one or version one draft. It's already changed a little bit, so we're continuing to improve it. But I'll just go over a few of the options that what this is going to look like. So principals will have options to ask their school SLP to provide professional development to staff. One option would be to review the entire oral language in kindergarten PD from last year at a staff meeting perhaps, when they have the opportunity to bring their educators together for a little bit longer period of time. Another option would be, we do lunch and learns a lot in schools. And this is when educators will come to a location in the school on their nutrition break or their lunch, depending on how the school schedule is set up. And the SLP will provide a shorter, because they don't have as much time, you know, so really they've got 20, 30 minutes to sit and listen and learn with us, and then they're off to their duty or whatever they have next on their busy agendas. So they can choose from a particular topic. So for example, we might do a lunch and learn just on noticing communication and dive a little bit more deeply into that topic. And then we're expanding the topics, and we're expanding this. It's probably what a lot of you are going to be interested in on the session for early communicators. When we rolled out oral language in kindergarten in the classrooms, we heard from educators that, well, the learning they had was appreciated, but they want to know more about students in their classrooms who are using alternative and blended devices. How can I include these children? How can I do better at being inclusive for students who aren't yet, using a lot of words or sentences or maybe no words at all yet? Right? How can I do better there? So we're expanding and developing an early communicators lunch and learn. And we're going to start by really diving into a lot of board resources that our department has already developed. But we just want to get them out there and get them in teachers' hands and work with educators to practice using them in the classrooms together with the students to really build their confidence in applying the resources that we have. The wrong button. There we go. And then educators themselves will have the option to invite their school SLP to a planning time to dive deeper into any topic that they feel that they need a little more information on, or they're looking to learn more about. It might just, the top one is a resource reminder. That would just be maybe for a new educator or an educator that's lost their binder or they can't find the materials, just a quick resend of the materials for self-learning. So that's a resource reminder. They can request that. They can request to have an SLP join them in a planning time to cover a particular topic that they choose, or they can invite the SLP to join them for a classroom period, typically a 40-minute period, and practice one or two of the strategies that we've covered through OLAKE, and have more opportunities for the educator to lead what it is, the strategy, but have the SLP beside them, coaching them and building their confidence, and just adding, maybe we'll try it a little bit differently, or let's try this one again and practice this more, just to get them, get the strategies really becoming a part of their daily practice for confidence. And superintendents also have a couple of options. They can connect with Annette and I, and we can set up office hours for staff in their superintendency, kind of a discussion time, question and answer about any OLAKE topics. And then they also are going to have the opportunity to invite families, a family presentation for families in their superintendencies to learn about these strategies and how families can implement some of these same things at home. The more generalization that we have, it really helps to build communication skills and oral language development. And I think, is that our last slide? I thought we had questions. Oh, we were just giving the stars. That's Annette putting in fancy things that are beyond my technical capabilities. Okay.
Committee accepts the oral language in kindergarten, 2025-26 presentation as presented, moved by Jen and seconded by Andrew. Questions, feedback?
I was just gonna say thank you so much for presenting that. You touched on it very briefly at the end in regards to parent involvement in the programming. So from my understanding, I guess not understanding, my question is that are parents involved at the beginning? Like, do they know that their children are going through this program or they're learning these strategies from the beginning? Or is it sort of like, here, we've done this with your child and now this is some of the findings that we have afterwards?
Thank you for your question. When we started OLINK, we had an information letter that went home to every kindergarten family. So they were aware that the SLPs were coming into the kindergarten classroom, not to work with any particular student, but to collaborate with the educators, going and reviewing strategies. And then as each school was finishing up covering a strategy with the educators, we sent a home connection letter home to every family to say, this is what your educators have discussed with the SLPs. Here are some examples of how you can try to implement this at home. So we included families in that way, but this next step, we want to include families more to have them, invite them to come to presentations with us and have them have the opportunity to ask their own questions about their own children, about their, and hopefully dive a little deeper. Does that answer your question?
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Other questions or feedback? Thanks for the great report and the data and having 202 teachers respond. How you did that and passed on because very rarely do we have that.
The secret is being very annoying.
So we need that more definitely because that's data we can actually dig into and count and having the numbers you do. I mean, the adaptation, that's fantastic. On data, do you have a plan as to how you're going to measure how it's impacting the students and their?
We've been thinking about that a lot. From the beginning, we were considering, should we think about screening oral language skills, communication skills, and really consent is the time that it takes to explain consent, because then we're working with an individual student. It's a very different kind of service that needs to really slow down and have deep conversations with families before we begin. But we would like to collect data through educators, through principals, through their observations. We do not have a plan to evaluate individual students through this learning at this point, but if you have ideas, we'd be happy to hear them.
I wasn't thinking so much individually, but as here you've got 20,000 impacted. So that whole cohort, I mean, how do you compare that to other cohorts?
So I've been pretty data obsessed with this, and I do want student level data, but the barriers are time. Being evaluative when you are a registrant of a professional college is a whole other beast. So there's different ways you can get student level data. One, Julia highlighted, is through the other professionals in the student's life. So we can be very strategic with the questions on the survey after the OLINK menu is implemented. So you can ask things like to an educator, I'm noticing my students use more X type of vocabulary. At the very least, that's giving us a sense of what's going on. Better still, we're going to collaborate with our excellent research department. And when you work on oral language, it's a long game. It's not a one season situation. So with the research department, we're trying to link our Acadience data, Acadience is an academic curriculum assessment, to the outcomes that we are seeing. As speech language pathologists, with such young kids and such large caseloads, the smartest way to work is through the adults. So the Acadians data combined with smart survey design is going to be our method, I would say, over the next 3 to 5 years. Oh, absolutely. Yes, thanks, Julia. And of course, families are, we didn't do a family survey last year. We did SLPs, educators, and principals, but now families are on our minds for these surveys.
So I appreciate that you touched on the fact that your SLPs are out there doing this, and just other things are not doing that. So I can see that it's great you were working with the ACs and the urgent cases. So does that mean we have a backlog now, kind of in the other grades?
I'm going to let Julia answer this. I'm new to the board, started last February, and I love my co-manager because she knows everything, and I can just say that. But I will say Appendix 1 in your executive summary that you might have shows you a year by year, you all want comparative data, give you comparative data. So we manage human beings and there's only so many hours in a day. In Appendix 1, the blue line is the Tier 1 hours and the pink line is Tier 3 hours. So you can see that we're generally on the ball despite having dedicated so many Tier 1 hours at the beginning of the year. And then I'll let Julia take over that.
For this initial rollout, because of the intense amount of time that it did take to lay the foundation for the learning, our numbers are lower for overall for the number of Tier 3 referrals that we took, and we knew they would be. There's just no way we can do that and still do the exact same work that we did in previous years without doing that, right? But I think we were down approximately 600-700. So instead of being 3,600 Tier 3 referrals, for example, we were in the high 2,000s, like close to 3,000. So we did, yes, we saw fewer students for individual support, but we're really hoping that if we can stick with this idea of building capacity, that educators will at least have confidence with knowing where to start, while they're waiting. What can I do today on the first day that I meet this student and notice that there's a communication difference or if there's a gap in communication or oral language needs. So long term, we believe that by continuing to build capacity, and now this year it'll be a much less time at Tier 1, right? We won't continue to see that huge amount of Tier 1 work that we did this year, but we can dive deeper, we can build skills together, we can partner more, as opposed to dropping in and having this perception that we, the SLP, can come and visit and somehow fix the situation, right? We all know that is not going to happen. It takes learning and partnership and trust with one another to continue to learn. So we're hoping that we can balance this out. So next year we'll have more individual referrals, I would expect, than we did this year. This year will be a lull. But that perhaps in the future we won't need as many Tier 3. Maybe some of the students that we get requests to see for Tier 3 for individual service, maybe teaching teams will have tools in their pockets that they'll be confident to come to an SRM meeting, have a discussion. The SLP could say, hey, how about this tried? Have you tried this? Have you tried this? Have you tried this? And the educators might have a little more capacity to go back and go, oh, you know what? That's right. I haven't tried those things. Those are good suggestions. I'm going to go get started with those and see how it goes and see if I can make a shift in learning. And maybe I won't need to come back again to ask for your specific support.
So you're planning to expand beyond the kindergarten teachers then?
We have included in the draft memo that this could be offered to grade 1 teachers. It can apply to many different teachers. So yes, yeah.
It's just that gap in the middle while this is all happening. Make sure we don't lose any of those students in those 600 that we can care for those. Yeah, make sure we can.
Just briefly, I also want to emphasize we can use the public's support to help the greater region understand that assessments aren't the end all be all of excellent clinical services, because we work in a multi-tiered fashion. So absolutely, no kids will be forgotten. But in a massive shift, I haven't seen another school board do what we did this year. Super proud of the SLP department.
Any questions? Sarah, do you have a question?
Hi, yes. Is the OLINK program independent of the school-based rehabilitation services SLP program to Burial Kids? And if so, is there any cross-collaboration?
Good question. This is a common question that comes up. And yes, they're completely separate, although we did inform, we did share with our SBS partners what we were doing, so that they were aware and of what we're doing, because, you know, speech, SBRS serves students for speech, whereas we serve students for language and communication, and speech to a degree, but speech is really the role of the SBRS team. So they're informed of what we've done and what we're doing and what the strategies are, so that they might apply some of those strategies in their school visits when they come, if it falls into the realm of what they're working on.
Thank you.
Oh, great, that covers your question. Any other questions or feedback? Thank you very much. That was an excellent report. We have moved and seconded this, so then we are just saying all in favor of accepting the report as presented. And that is adopted. So we are moving on to communications for action received. There's two strongly worded letters from the Upper Grand District School Board regarding funding support for students with special needs and mental health needs. And there is a very similar letter from Blue Water District School Board that was directed to Premier Board and the Minister and various other key figures. Those are both in the package. Do we need to remove these separately, even though they're very similar? Yeah, I think we can. And just to note, we can, the PDSBC Act can also have one of these letters and send one in. Unfortunately, personally, I've just been a little too busy to, but we can throw our voice into this as well. It is worth doing. But let's have a motion to accept all of these letters as submitted. Jenny, mover and seconder. And is there any questions? These are very, it's basically a test that we could use that's being shared around by the different SEACs. It is important to raise our voices. I know it's a rather frustrating time dealing with the provincial supervision as to education, but it's important that we raise our voices. So if there's no questions or comments about these, then we will accept them as submitted. All in favor? Okay, we are accepting those. And we got chair's request for written questions. There's none of those. Reports from representatives, we're not doing that this month. Questions asked of and by committee members. I have a question. I've noticed, I've checked several times with the PDSB SEAC web page. It's different every time I look at it, but it does seem that some of the videos have been removed. At the last time I looked, there was also none of the previous minutes. So is there, the question I have first of all is who is editing? And secondly, what are they editing? And it could just, I do know that there were the videos, and in my opinion, the videos that were already live streamed should be available there.
They are available. Let me check this. So on our main board and committee meeting page, they're definitely all there.
No. Yeah, like the last time we checked, they were all up.
You can take that back and.
Yeah, because
and
I
look
think,
now as we're.
I don't think that there should be any retroactive changes based on whoever. The live streaming that we did is the live streaming that we did, and, those should not be removed based on the fact that the live streaming has been ended. We were able to direct parents and caregivers, media, other people, and it did make, the SEAC committee look quite transparent.
Through the chair, yes, it is available under the, so just for those tuning in, once you reach the Peel District School Board website, if you go to the ribbons at the top of the webpage and select our board, once that drop-down menu appears, select board and committee meetings. Once you land on that board and committee meeting page, there's a panel on the left side of the page, and you can either select agendas, minutes, and decisions, where you'll find all past minutes and agendas, and also there is a selection for meeting highlights and recordings, and all the past meetings are archived in there for all meetings.
Yeah.
You have different access?
I think you might have different access.
And maybe because it's desktop versus mobile
No,
access.
Green has not used it as a private system.
Yes, that's on the.
It's on the public side.
Yeah, well, I guess it's, then we'll have to, if you can send out that particular link, because, I've been on the website in the past month and have not been able to find it.
They're not what they were before.
No. So let's just make sure that everybody has access to those, because if we just go to the SEAC page, they used to be there, and, they're not visible.
So I can see the videos, but I cannot see the new. I did follow through, like, so maybe, yeah, I can show you how I got to after the meeting. I can see the new video archive.
Okay.
But it's not the meeting notes. Did you go through the whole, the three horizontal kind of menu, click on that? But not agendas and minutes, no, there's nothing there. Oh, yeah, wait, there's no code there.
We'll follow up with LSS on that access. I think what I'm hearing right now is it's not accessible via the mobile version of the website, but definitely here on the desktop it's available.
Well, I think it also should be logical, that when, it used to be, you could just direct people to the SEAC page, and then you just people do it that way, it doesn't seem as accessible, and both Jen and I checked that.
I'll take that back.
Okay.
And also we'll take note of the mobile access.
Right. So I think that that's really important, that the work that we've already done should be up and in a place where you don't have to wander through the wilds of the website to find. The other question I had, I remembered that I'd forgotten during one of the presentations, is the slides that are being part of the presentation, they'll be part of the record that will be circulated with the, is it part of the minutes, or is it just circulated to us after the meeting?
But we can do similar to what we did last month, where we attach it to the agenda on the website.
Okay, that's great, thank you. Are there any other questions? I feel like there should be more, but those are the two I have right now. Any other questions or comments?
I don't know if it's a question or if I should wait to the motion action log, but I wanted to follow up. I wanted to follow up on a motion that we submitted, I think sometime in January, February, when the meeting was canceled, and we've been talking about this since 2024, so I'm really hoping that we can get an update. But we submitted a motion to have the kids with exceptionalities be removed from the lottery process for the regional choice learning program. And we haven't gotten an update. Do you have an update on that?
Through you, Chair, the motion has been brought forward, and we are still awaiting a decision on that, so we haven't heard back from that.
Can we give that a go? Sure. Because it seems like a long time, doesn't it? Absolutely. Yeah. That's good. Yeah. What is the standard? What would you have had to respond to? What timeline would you have to respond to that? The incentive motion. Sorry, just to clarify, in terms of staff completing a report on their motion, or for it to go through like the process?
Prior to their being a supervisor.
So time frame, I believe that was scheduled to appear on the January board agenda for consideration. January 2026. And we're in June. So yeah, that's strangely not, isn't it?
Yeah, and just to Jen's point, like, what would be the consideration for, we have not heard back, and so now our next step should be to follow through with tapping who next to get a response. What would be the next step? If we don't hear back, then we can submit a motion and we can forward it to
Somebody.
somewhere. Yeah.
Just, the way I see it is in January, we've had board of trustees, and then in February, we went under provisional supervision, and sometimes in March, we will assign a supervisor. So when the supervisor started, we have shared this with her, and she said she will be looking at it. At my next meeting, I will let her know that we are waiting, SEAC committees are waiting for response.
So everything has to go step by step through this way.
Because then in the past, you would have brought something forward, it would have gone to board of trustees. So now it's your board of trustees, we have the supervisor.
So we would definitely want to share with her that she needs to put a wiggle on that. Yes, go ahead.
Sorry, and just, I'm not clear, if maybe, well, when you follow up, if we could get a response on what would be the acceptable time frame to then say, okay, you know, we've waited far too long, and now we need to do X, Y, and Z. Thank you.
I would say we're there, but it's X, Y, Z. Yeah, oh yeah, like it's been months, like it's a fairly straightforward job. So yeah, just how do we get that prioritized and move forward? Because it shouldn't be that difficult, I would think. Other questions? Anybody from our online friends? Okay, if we've covered that, then community member motions for consideration. There's nothing else, is there? Not other than ones that we've put on tonight. Notices of motions and petitions, nothing. So we are on to the infamous motion action log, where things hopefully go to a motion and action.
So through you, Chair, there was a question asked in the May meeting around accessibility for students and how this PDSB plan, when new schools are being built and braille signage. The planning department provided an incredibly comprehensive response that's in the agenda. But to share that they do say that, just to do a high level overview, that the design and construction department does adhere to all codes associated with accessibility. During the duration of each project, we extensively review with a third prime consultant, the architect. They do recognize that design barriers are a form of discrimination and follow procedures to ensure that they comply with relevant legislation, such as the Accessibility for Ontario's with Disabilities Act, the Ontario Building Act, Ontario Building Code, and the principles of universal design. And as shared, you know, myself and my the manager of occupational therapy were a part of the school visit to several schools in other areas, looking at accessibility and ensuring that when we were designing schools, included that. So they talked about what they do in the pre-design, design, and construction and permit stage, where they get site design and development access, and then working into interior and architectural related design. And they give some specifics in that around sideways and pathways are reviewed for the intentions of accessibilities, accessible parking spaces, curb ramps, depressed curbs, crosswalks with zebra markings, and other forms of signage, bright color contrasting between objects or surfaces, gradual transitions, pedestrian loading zones, accessible washrooms on all floors, accessing all floors via the elevator, bright color contrasting used between objects or services, water bottle stations to be accessible, tactile services, braille signage, universal design intended products, accessible sinks, clearance requirements in classrooms, hallways, and other rooms, and rails on ramps, obstacles or locations of furniture, that does not impede access to rooms or spaces, overhead clearance greater than required by OBC, and doorway and entrances combined with OBC requirements, and floor service transition heights are considered as well. So thank you to the planning department for a very comprehensive look at all the things that they do. The next question was around PDSB giving the number of staff that require accessibility accommodations. Candace Namath has agreed to provide a response when the information is available. Request to share the audit tools for the students completing the accessibility report. Those were continuing to be worked on because we've had meetings with schools and students, and those were shared with SEAC today. We are really open to your feedback, and on that, once you've had a time to review, you can email feedback to me and Vice Principal Candace Namath, along with Occupational Manager Michelle Zillick, who are both online, are taking care of that. That project that we're really excited about, and including student voice in our accessibility. We answered the question already around the side-by-side comparison, and a motion was raised. And you asked for more details on funding sources for special education staff, and we did provide a comprehensive report that really looked at all of the funding sources and the different sources of revenue, as well as the expenditures that were shared, and how we are under allocated for the level of need that we have within the board. We're happy to share that slide deck again, and as always, when we plan for future meetings in the summer, we can certainly request that that department comes back. And I think you had asked for it early in November last time, so we were planning an earlier meeting again. Thank you. Happy to answer any questions.
Any questions or comments on the motion? Action on?
Please don't ask me any architectural questions. Let's start with the architectural questions.
So I understand the data regarding staff was completed in April, so when do we expect to have that? So you did a survey, county survey with staff, which indicated people would self-identify, would say how they're feeling, and that's kind of what we were looking for. It was just basically the number of staff with disabilities. So I'm just wondering when that will be. You're saying Candace will bring what's available through the timeline.
Through you, Chair, I do not know the timeline. I have to connect with the research department, who is, I think, disaggregating the data around the year voice plans, and then we'll share that forward with us. So I do not have a timeline, but it can remain on the motion action log, so we ensure that we are held accountable to bring response back.
The audit tools for the students that she said to, they just got 4 or 5 today, so I didn't get a chance to really look at it, but in looking at the titles, it looks like it's mainly physical barriers, things like that. It's not talking about attitudinal barriers. Is that, am I accurate?
So through you, Chair, I'll ask Michelle Zillick, who's online, to answer questions. There were more documents that we were going to send, but we were looking, I thought the request was just for the audit tools. Michelle, are you available to answer that question?
Yes, through you, Chair. Thank you for having me online. We did only share a very minimal amount of resources that was pertaining more towards a checklist or an audit checklist for physical and for sensory, mainly pertaining to student resources that students could use potentially to look at their different environmental spaces within their schools. However, we do have additional resources that we can share with you that may be more along what you are looking for.
Okay, no, we appreciate it. Yeah, the discussion I just listened to again today was that we asked about how you're identifying whether attitude barriers are changing. This program was going to be a good way to figure that out. So I don't know how that's actually going to work in the checklist. That's not good.
Through you, Chair, we can send the remaining resources that were not included today.
And regarding the funding and the budget discussion, I did go back to try and find that slide deck in November, and it's actually not there. It says that we had a presentation, but there was no slide deck at all.
Through you, Chair, was my understanding that my assistant had sent it out the day after, but I can check back in, to make sure that that's happened and can commit to resending it out tomorrow, because we do have access to it.
Okay, but my point is, it's not actually in the minutes or in the agenda. I remember.
On the,
Through you, Chair, I think we just started putting the slide decks in more recently into the agendas. That was a more recent addition. That was not something that we had been requested to do earlier, especially because that was a written report. So when we have written reports, the slide deck usually is a summary. That doesn't follow that same standard of report writing. That allows for greater accessibility and ease of understanding. So I can understand, but that was not done requested previously, so that's just a new practice based on feedback.
I think historically we've been asking for documentation, because we're having a budget discussion, we need to have information ahead. And the budget discussion we had last November was about last year's budget. Right now, we should be discussing next year's budget, and we still have seen no numbers for next year's budget. So that's where this question came from. It's great that we have paid everything from last year. We have not seen numbers this year. All we've seen is that we're not gonna have enough money. And no indication as to what that means, right? No numbers. So in the past, I went through and looked at the old financial records, and we used to get, what we're spending on, at mid-level, or different levels, those types of budget information. So I don't know if I have to make a motion to request the information that we need to have a budget discussion.
Through you, Chair, I do believe that when the Controller Alache Charles did present, she did present charts around how much was spent on staffing, what percentage of our budget was spent on staffing, what was spent on equipment, what was spent on tools. I do believe that that was included in the report that she shared in November on the slide deck. But again, I can make sure that that comes out, but that was shared.
This is where the motion from before is, we need the information ahead of time, we need to write it, we don't need to search for it afterwards. And when we're looking for it, we're looking for budget information, not graphs, so. Trying to find some, anyway, I can share the examples with you, what we're looking for. If we need to create a motion so we get numbers, we can do that right now. Will that just go to you? Are you committing to bring us numbers for our budget discussion next year?
Through you, Chair, I don't want to make a commitment on behalf of another department, so if you feel that it's best served through a motion, please feel free to raise one. I do not want to connect the right colleagues.
I think it would, I'm a little mystified about it being difficult to provide numbers for a budget discussion, because budgets are made of numbers. So I would think that that would be pretty straightforward and ask. Do we want to make that very obvious?
Through you, Chair, I'm happy, Jen, to talk to you about what was shared before and share that forward.
Right, but I think what we're talking about is wanting specific numbers moving forward. Is that right?
Yeah, so let's all have a discussion, and I will pull together all the information in September if we need to make a motion, so we have it for next year.
Okay.
So yeah, exactly what we're looking for, so we have an actual budget discussion next year.
Thank you. Thanks again. Other questions or comments on the motion action law? So,
A couple of things are missing from the motion action law that we talked about. One was, sorry, there's someone else needs to talk when I look through my notes.
No, you're doing great. I do a lot of talking too, so.
So I think the motion needs to go back on the action tracker loss, so it doesn't get lost.
Do you want me to, I have a. Go ahead.
Yeah, go. Yeah.
Okay, so I also recall from the main meeting that Julia Evangelisto had made a presentation on learning environment options for students with special needs in kindergarten and grades 1 and 2, which regrettably was not live streamed or filmed, even though we expected it to be. And we agreed that we would do a follow-up with her. That was going to be this meeting. Does that need to go into the motion action logs?
Through you, Chair, through governance, they did reply back to both yourself and to the delegate that her motion was approved and that the report would be forthcoming in September.
Okay, so, and that would be not just directly to her, but would be within the group as well.
I do send her a copy, but she was notified.
Yeah, we just want to make sure that it's followed up, that things can get easily lost.
So you're gonna at least confirm the total number of positions that were, that so far have been, from special education. Target. We had thought it was 187, and you had said you think that was right. So you're gonna bring back the actual number that, sure, we'll bring that up. You don't have that, I don't have that right now, I didn't do that, I didn't recall that being on the motion action log, so I did not prepare that. Apologies.
Do we want to put that on the motion?
Yeah. Through you, Chair, what is the exact question? How many staff members have been, how much was the number of reduction in staff at the central group? It's the special education. Is that specific? Any other? And then the other question that was asked was, we have a list of positions in special education, but we had asked how many other staff are paid for by the special education budget. Through sure that was also not captured in the motion action log, so minutes, so I will have to bring that back. That's fine. So, but you were asking budget discussions, so we should kind of, you're asking what special education staff. What special education department pays for a staff outside the department? All staff have to pay for it. Through chair, we'll just have to make sure that's reflected for the motion. Action on. Perfect. Thanks so much. Are there any other additions or questions about the motion action log from anyone? I think that was a comprehensive discussion, and honestly, like, bring your questions and comments. There's no such thing as speaking too much here. Like, that's what we're here to do. And there are times where we rely on Jen a lot because you are the amazing person who goes through all of this, and we do really appreciate you, but we don't want to feel like you're the only one asking questions. So we will also do that. Just before our next item is adjournment, and just before we adjourn, I just do want to say that I know that in particular the May meeting was pretty discouraging. At least that was my experience of it, because I felt like there was a real lack of transparency around the end of the live streaming, which we have really celebrated, and we celebrated publicly to other organizations and in the media. And I think that overall, just the unexpected provincial supervision has been very tough to navigate. And we also understand it's tough to navigate for staff. But for us as community representatives, this has been tough sledding. It was already tough sledding to get information. It's a lot to take in. We need to participate, create a process here where there's more engagement and consultation rather than presentation, and us feeling quite overwhelmed and just agreeing. But what I would ask of each of the community representatives, this is when we dig in. This is when we ask more questions. This is when we demand more. This is not when we step back. This is when we lean in. So I do want to, and I honestly wasn't feeling like that when I left the last meeting. I was quite frustrated. I do ask that in the future, as we move forward, that our friends the PPSB staff are open and transparent with us about any changes to the meetings, because we're your allies. And that, as you can see, when you blindside someone like me or Jen, it doesn't go well. Whether that was intentional or not doesn't really matter, because like the live streaming was something to me that was really crucial for parents and caregivers and other interested people to be able to attend these meetings. And the fact that we found out midstream was embarrassing. It felt unprofessional, and I was quite upset about it, as were other members of the
committee. So, but particularly for all these community reps, I know this is a lot of work. It's a lot of time to go through. And we want the meetings and the agendas to stay nice and big and chunky. I've seen some of the agendas of other boards, and we do not want them to become 3 pages. I love 8-page, packages. And I do ask all of us here at the table and everyone who is attending online, stick with this. Like we got to lean in and we got to be even more engaged, and ask more questions, and we have to push harder. So on that note, is there anything else anybody wants to share? Again, special thanks to Jen for being most thoroughly. I know. Yes.
I just have one question. Is there an update on the supervision? Like how much longer is that gonna last, or I haven't heard anything on that since.
It's a good question. I guess that would be.
Through you, Chair, we at this point do not have an answer to that. So we don't know when it will end. So we're just working along and doing our work through the supervisor.
Okay. That's unfortunate. Would be a diplomatic way of saying it. It's unacceptable. And we know that that's not on your behalf, but it's unacceptable for us to create this instability in such an important part of our community. There's nothing more important to me than the education of our young people, and this instability and lack of knowledge is really unacceptable, and the Minister of Education and the province needs to do better. So if there's no other questions or comments, yes?
Sorry, Nina, I was just gonna add, so just so that I'm clear, are we gonna get the motion action items added and the output within the next 7 business days? Because I know we're breaking the summer, and I just want to make sure that there's a lot of additions that they were added onto the package.
So we don't forget for this.
That motion's gonna have to again go through the governance process. We'll see what we can do for this time.
Which part has to go through?
So it's a motion.
Okay,
So we'll be working on the structure.
Oh, okay.
But we'll do our best.
Yeah, just because we don't want, like, especially, with the gaps of performance, it's easy to see that one. Is that acceptable?
I mean, whatever the motion can.
Yeah, but that's not a time frame. Good point.
Through the chair, just to give some context, our work order just retired on Monday, so we are down lines.
Right, we just don't want it to, could be by condition. Oh, wait, that is to be either. Yes.
I suggest that we set up the agenda forward. Sorry, through you, Chair, the agenda or the motion?
Sorry, the motion action and the minutes.
My suggestion is to stick with our procedure and it's covered what's discussed at the meeting.
But we're happy to do that, but we just need a time frame that is in days or weeks.
We can work towards the end of the month.
We're getting there. See, if we just keep asking, we eventually start to nail things down. So we'll be looking for that, hopefully via email by the end of the month. Because we do know that, staff things are over summer. Okay, so we'll be watching for that later in the month. If there's no other questions or comments, then we will be adjourning. And thank you for sticking through a very challenging school year. Thank you to the staff for the work that they do, all of you who have attended tonight and hopefully will be attending in the future. Now, sadly, do not have live streaming. And of course, all of my representative colleagues for attending all of these meetings and sticking with it. It is 9:01, so there is a motion to adjourn. second to everyone. And, so, yes, is there,
I just wanted to extend my thanks to all the committee members because this I started in March attending SEAC, and I find that it's a group of very dedicated, committed, and members who hold the board accountable. And I want to acknowledge the leadership of Claudine, Superintendent Sukato, because she's always coming to us with, we need to take this back, how are we going to do it, and so on, and our governance officer, and our board reporter, and all staff who spend a lot of time in ensuring that we're able to provide data and information and respond to questions. And what I hear in these few months, what I've seen, we're hoping that we begin next year with taking into account everything that you all are suggesting and bringing back the meetings in a way that will, help everybody say, yes, we're getting answers. Answers may not always be what we want to hear, but this is what it is, this is how we do it, and this is the why behind it. But always keeping our students front and center and our families. So thank you to all for giving your time to us and, really working with us. We feel as a community together, as part of this year.
thank you very much. All right, so, all in favor of adjourning? That is a motion carried. Thank you very much. Enjoy that free. Have a great summer, everybody.
Good night.
You speak truth.